What's going on, guys? Magdallan here. The Crucible League approaches. I am less hyped than I was after just watching the live stream once I had a chance to really get through the patch notes and hear some commentary from other people in the community. It did reduce the hype level a little bit, but I still think there's going to be quite a bit of fun to be had. I'm still very interested in the league mechanic itself, and as a complete addict of the game, I will be playing at least for the first month or so, regardless of what they end up doing and how good or bad the leveling process is and all of that stuff. And so I thought that it would be a good time to pop in and share the tips that I have for trying to have at least as stress-free of an experience with League Start and League progression as is possible in Path of Exile. And the first way that you can do that is to prep for League success. So make sure all your add-ons are up to date and make sure that your loot filter is ready to go. If you're using Filter Blade, which most people are, then Neversink he's pretty on top of the game with getting that stuff ready to go, and so you should be able to have all your add-ons up to date and have your filter ready to go before the league actually launches. You don't want to be caught actually making your character and then realize, oh shit, I don't have a loot filter ready and one of my add-ons isn't up to date. Anything like that will slow you down. You have to tab out, you have to get that stuff going. You don't want to mess around with that. And then you want to have your build guide right up if you're using one, which I would argue that for most players you should be using a build guide for your first character of the league. You should have that open as well as the POE for that build, so that again, if you need to reference anything, it's as simple as just tabbing over to it. You're not trying to find the file somewhere. You're not messing around with having to find that stuff while you're actually trying to get into the leveling process. And then I recommend having a leveling checklist open if you are like me and you tend to forget stuff. Particularly for me, acts 6 and 7, I tend to forget stuff, or just I can't remember exactly what I'm supposed to do or what side quests I do want to complete and which ones I don't, so on and so forth. So if you're like me, make sure you have that checklist ready to go, so that again, you're not trying to find that once the problem happens. If you need it, it's already open, it's already there. And then last thing on this topic is get some extra sleep. So I like to go to bed fairly late on the Wednesday preceding league launch, so that I'm pretty tired when when the evening comes on Thursday, so that I can force myself to go to bed really early. And then I just try and get as much sleep as I can so that I can go, full degenerate mode when the actual league launch happens. Next thing is have reasonable expectations about your leveling speed. So keep in mind that there's some leveling changes that have been made. And so you might actually take, if you're somebody that takes 10 hours to complete the campaign, you might be looking at an hour or even more of additional time that you're going to be spending actually trying to level that first character. And so adjust your expectations, try and keep the frustration at bay. And you should know your previous early league progression, and you should also not expect it to change very much if you didn't really do anything specific to change it. So if you're like me and you just blasted maps for 2 months and leveling alts with twink gear, you're not gonna that's not practice. You're not gonna get any faster at league start by doing that. If you actually want to increase your campaign speed at the league start, you need to be practicing that specific thing. And if that's a thing that's important to you, there's still time to do that. So get in there tomorrow and start, making characters. Try and do one a day leading up to the league if you have the stomach for it. I do not, but I support you if you do. And then remember that we do have Easter on the Sunday after league launch. And so for most of us, myself included, I'm going to probably lose a chunk, maybe as much as half of that second day or third day, I guess it is. And that's just another thing that you have to keep in mind. And so then, come day 4, don't be that frustrated if you feel like it's going a little bit slower than you were anticipating. Because remember, the leveling was slower. That's by GGG's design. And you had some time that kind of got taken away because you had to do stuff, for Easter. And so that's all I'll say about that. The next thing is you should pick a build that will work if efficiency is something that matters to you. If you don't care how much currency you make in the first few weeks, and you don't care if you have a dud build for your league start, you just make another one, you're good, then this doesn't apply to you. But if you are somebody who wants to really get a good footing in the league, then you need to select a build that works, not one that looks cool or sounds interesting. Unfortunately, that's just the way that the game works. That's the way the restart of the economy works. So my advice is plan on making at least 2 characters in the league. Have your league start that you're selecting for the purpose of getting your footing, and then have a second character that you are working towards that is more desirable to your playstyle, that's more interesting to you, that you can work towards. Pick a league start build that has a guide available and that has footage you can watch of someone who knows the build well, playing it through the campaign ideally, but at least at maps or at the end of the campaign, you want to actually see somebody playing this thing before you go and make it yourself. And then make sure and check and see if they have, some commentary on how the build has changed in the Crucible League. And if you despise leveling characters like I do, then find a build from a base class that corresponds with the class that you want to play for your second character, so that you can just buy up some extra regrets and whatever and just fully respec the character into the desired build when the time comes. So for example, last week I started as Poisonous Concoction and then rolled it into Death's Oath, and so I was an occultist the whole way through, and there was just no problem there. I didn't have to level another character unless I specifically wanted to. I was able to just do both of those builds on the same tune. And then last slide here is, I recommend that you go into a league with some specific goals, some short-term, medium, and long-term goals that you can work towards, so that if you get to a point where you're getting frustrated or where you're starting to get a little bit bored, you kind of have a tentative outline of what you want to accomplish. So here are the goals that I've set for myself. Yours will obviously be different than mine, but just to give you an idea of how you might think about this. So I want to roll, from weak start character into a Blade Vortex or a Tornado Shot character so that I can farm up a bunch of currency in the first, 2 to 3 weeks of the league so that I can really get a strong footing. So I'm looking to really only spend about maybe 5 days maximum on my actual league start character before I completely change it or level up a new character with the currency, the initial currency that I make, so that I can then expand out my wealth a little bit and start to make other stuff. And then I want to use that currency farmed with the second character and then try out some new stuff, the new vol skills in particular. I'd like to mess around with those for the purpose of, I want to make 2 or 3 build guides this league instead of just 1 like I did last week. And I think I might have done 2 the league before that, but generally speaking, what ends up happening is I end up making other content, and actually doing the build guides kind of gets pushed to the wayside. And so I want to really focus this league and get 2 or 3 of those done. And then I want to set myself up so that I have better characters than I did last week to reprise my farm strategy summary and review series that I enjoyed making a lot, and a lot of folks seem to enjoy that content, so I want to set myself up to be able to do that again. And then lastly, I want to try out an actual bossing character, and this will probably, maybe this will happen earlier in the league, but I'm thinking this will be the thing that I do once stuff is starting to drop off, and I get that feeling where, like, okay, I've got 2 or 3 weeks left before I'm going to be starting to move on to doing other projects, maybe playing less Path of Exile. I want to actually get in there and do some boss farming. It's something that I've literally never done in the game before. And so those are my goals, and as you can see, they kind of take me through the progression of the league cycle from the very beginning up until where I'm probably going to be, after I make the bossing character. I've got build guides up, I've done the farm summary and review series, then I'm kind of looking at, well, this is probably the, getting towards the end of my league. And so that is my advice, and I hope that you guys have a fantastic league start. I will be back very soon with hopefully a few more videos before we actually get into the league, but of course I will be streaming, I will be making content in full swing once the Crucible League launches. And so I hope to see you guys in the next video. I appreciate you.